the word, the gospel truth in which we stand.
You know, Philippians chapter 1, verse 27 tells us that whatever happens, we are to conduct ourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. But this raises a question. How can we conduct ourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ if we don't know the gospel? And I don't know that we can assume that everyone, even all the people in church, know the content and the implications of the gospel. What is the gospel? It's like being good and stuff and like loving your neighbor. Bible says, just let Jesus into your heart and stuff, dude. Bible says, what is the gospel? We're going to be spending the next 5 weeks asking and answering that one question. What is the gospel? And this series is called G is for Gospel because we're going to look at and define the gospel and tell the gospel story using 5 words that begin with the letter G. We all have a sense that our lives are not what they're meant to be, and this world is not what it was meant to be. So first, we're going to talk about the original goodness that God created our world in and created us for. Now, Scripture says that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And so that's the next thing we're going to talk about. Our guilt, our individual guilt, our collective guilt that stands between us and God. But then we're going to talk about grace, how God has not left us to our guilt, our shame, and the full consequences of our disobedience. In fact, God is working to make right, renew, heal, and restore what our sin has damaged and broken and ruined. Then we're going to talk about good works, but we're going to frame them as gratitude. This is when Scripture talks about living worthy of the gospel, it's talking about living in gratitude for the goodness of God's grace. And then finally, we're going to talk about glory, the glory that is to come, our future when God does renew and heal and restore all things. The gospel is for the world, but it's also for the church. In fact, the gospel is for the church first. Without the gospel, we don't have a story that is worthy of living up to. We don't have a story that's going to help us make sense of the mess that we're often in and that we see the world is in. We don't have a story that's going to give us hope, like true hope for a future with God. In this series, G is for Gospel, we are going to be rediscovering the simplicity, the beauty, and the hope of the gospel.